I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 50. Today in the show, we're exploring the changing dynamics and motivations of the deer hunting world, and we're joined by outdoor filmmakers Dustin Lutt and Hitchins. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. And as I mentioned earlier, this is episode number 50. Can you believe that? Not only that, but we're also recording this episode exactly 1 year to the date since our first episode launched. And wow, it's been a heck of a year since. And that said, I want to take a quick second to simply thank all of you for joining us on this crazy ride. Your support and feedback and the time that you've spent listening to us, it's meant the world. So thank you so much for making the first year of the Wired to Hunt podcast such a success. Now, given that it's our 1 year anniversary, it made sense that this episode we should take on a topic of special importance, and we've decided to do just that. So joining us today are Dustin Lutt and Hitchins of Rockhouse Motion, one of the most innovative and inspirational filmmaking teams in the outdoor industry right now. And these guys are jumping on the line to speak with us about their most recent film, Game of Inches. And this film, which if you haven't seen yet, you should, dives deep into the changing dynamics of the deer hunting community and the dividing camps of trophy hunters and meat hunters. So today we're going to discuss all of this and much more. But before all that, Mr. Co-host Dan Johnson, how's life treating you today?
So, it's pretty good. Typically on an anniversary, I guess the man takes the woman out for a nice dinner. So because this is our 50th 1 year anniversary, does this mean that you're going to take me out for a nice dinner? Because you're the host and I'm just the co-host.
Well, I'm glad we know who wears the pants in this relationship, Dan. We got that out of the way without an argument, so that's right. Good. Yeah,
just
sure.
Just waiting for a nice steak dinner.
We could probably make that happen.
Okay.
Or I can send you a picture of the steak I'll be eating tonight. Maybe that'll count for something.
It will just make me extremely jealous, and then I probably won't talk to you like a real marriage.
I was going to say, that sounds like a lot of relationships. Oh, yeah, but that's pretty crazy, huh? 50 episodes.
That's a lot. We've been talking a lot.
We have. I've probably talked to you more than, probably anyone except for my wife the last year.
That's all right. Hey, at least, the thing about it is we've covered a lot of topics, but we really haven't. I mean, there's so much more to talk about, and I'm looking forward to year two.
Yeah, me too. It's neat. I wondered when we started this whole thing, will there be things to talk about, a year from now or 2 years from now? And, like you said, we've put 50 hours in, or probably more than 50 hours since a lot of our episodes are over an hour. And there's still a ton of ground to cover. So that's a good thing for the podcast. It's a good thing for you and me since we love talking about this stuff, and hopefully that's a good thing for everybody listening, because I hope and I think there'll be a lot of really cool topics that we're going to be diving into over the coming weeks and months, and who knows what 2015 is going to bring. It's already off to a great start, and I can't wait to see what this season has in store.
Right. I mean, and we already have a lot of things that are planned for us to do, so we can talk about.
Oh yeah, some exciting plans, some exciting hunts, some great trips, and lessons learned for sure will be coming up along the way too. So,
sure.
So that said, today though we're going to talk about kind of a higher umbrella topic of some of the changing dynamics in the hunting world and the hunting community, and I'm really excited about that because I think this is an important thing to discuss. And I know you've got some opinions on these things, and I definitely have some opinions and perspectives that I want to share. And I think our guests, Dustin and Aaron, are really going to be able to give us a neat perspective as well, given their own hunting backgrounds and given the time they spent putting together this film, Game of Inches, which covers a lot of these themes. So overall, I'm pretty stoked for this chat, and I don't know, it's going to be a fun hour.
Yeah, that seems to be. I see everywhere online. It seems to be, some meat eating revolutions going on, is what they're calling it, or like a wild game eating revolution. You kill your own food type of revolution. I don't know about it. It makes me. It's like guys like me and you. We've been doing it almost our whole lives. I don't know if it would fall under the revolution type of category, but there's definitely some buzz going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of that is referring to is that people outside of the hunting community are starting to take notice of what we've been doing for a long time and realizing that there really is some merit to it. I think that's what a lot of this is about, and we'll probably dive into this later on in more detail. But me personally, I'm all for anyone who wants to start, enjoying the things we've been enjoying our whole lives. Anyone who wants to learn more about that and get involved and find out about how great it is to kill your own food and to eat meat that you have, harvested and prepared yourself. I think that's an awesome thing, and I'm personally all for, welcoming anyone who's interested into the family, because I think, we're a minority. Hunters are in general, and the more people we can get that kind of understand why we love this so much, I think that's a good thing. So I'm sure we'll dive into it more once we get Aaron and Dustin on the line, but I'm excited to have that conversation.
Yep, looking forward to it.
So I guess that said, do you think we have anything else to cover before we get Aaron and Dustin on the line?
No. Other than when you're going to buy me dinner, I think we should probably get those guys on the phone.
All right, we can talk steak later. For now,
Okay.
let's get Aaron and Dustin on the phone.
Sounds good.
All right, on the line with us is Dustin Lutt and Aaron Hitchins. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, we were just talking a couple minutes ago just about how timely we think this topic that we're going to be discussing today is, and how you guys are really going to be great people to talk to about this, given your work putting together Game of Inches and everything really that film was themed around. I think it's such an important thing for us to really dive into here. But before we get into all of that, for those who maybe aren't familiar with the two of you, could you both give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and some of your background, and then maybe a little bit about what you do and what exactly Rock House Motion is? And maybe, Dustin, you can start for us.
Yeah, no problem. Dustin Lutt. I'm originally from South Dakota, moved down to Kansas here 3 years ago, and kicked off Rock House Motion with Matt White. We brought on Aaron, and our specialty has always been in the outdoor films and commercial work. And I've been hunting ever since I was a little kid, and always had that passion, and truly blessed to be doing what I'm doing. Aaron, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I grew up in rural Ontario up north in Canada, and I grew up hunting from, like most of us from a really young age, but it was never super specific as far as what my passion was. It was a mixture of waterfowl and deer hunting and turkey hunting, small game and fishing, and I just have always had a passion for being outside, and making the most of the time that I can spend out and around. And so deer hunting for me, and I'm sure we'll get into this later on, but deer hunting for me was very, very much different than it is now. And here, now that I've also moved to Canada. And as far as what I do at Rock House and Dustin does at Rock House, overall, like from a higher level, for those of you less familiar, we do basically premium brand creation and just brand and content creation within the outdoor space, as well as sort of what I call the real life space, or the mainstream media. And we make films, we take photos, we tell stories, we write, we design, we create. We just try and make people's day better with the work that we do.
That's awesome. Well, you guys are certainly doing a good job of it. I first got to know Matt White probably 5 years ago, and ever since then, and I saw him starting to work with you, Dustin, and now Aaron. The things you guys have been producing over at Rock House have just been incredible, and you really are producing some of the absolute best stuff in the industry, whether it's the outdoor industry or the real life industry. It's some really incredible stuff. So that being the case, I want to talk about one of those most recent pieces of content you guys put together, which was Game of Inches. It's this recent film that you guys have put out last year that really is an incredible piece of work and very timely and focused on a great topic. Before we dive into that theme, though, can you guys give us just a high-level overview of just what the film is about in general, and maybe how you guys came to producing this film? For those that haven't seen it yet, hopefully everyone will go ahead and take a look and watch that film after this, but for those that haven't seen it yet, just to set the stage, maybe Aaron, can you start us off with a brief overview of what Game of Inches is about, and then from there maybe talk about how it all came to be?
Well, Game of Inches is really a very relevant story, not just for the industry, but for ourselves. We were looking last fall at making a film about whitetail hunting, and it became pretty immediately apparent that the way that Dustin viewed whitetail hunting and the way that I viewed whitetail hunting were very different. Dustin comes from a situation where he's got an incredible track record of harvesting mature deer and managing his property and hunting deer basically, in the most labor intensive and successful way possible. Very, very textbook. Your QDMA, overall, just doing it sort of by the book. Whereas I grew up hunting deer because it's what we did in November, and it was a time to spend with family and friends. And, beautiful time of year to be in the woods. But we, as far as the deer, we do what we could to make sure that we had deer around. But when it came down to season, we had we were not very choosy as far as the animals that we harvested. So whenever it came time for deer season to roll around, and we're looking at making a deer film, and Dustin, a transplant from Nebraska, and myself, a transplant from rural Ontario in Canada, we had very different views about how we were going to hunt each spot and what our goals were with each spot and what people wanted to see in a film. And what we sort of realized is that the views that we harbored personally were sort of the anchor points for two very different parts of the outdoor industry in general. And so what we decided to do is through our own personal lenses, we had the luxury of having those extreme viewpoints and being able to go through a very real and genuine experience sort of on behalf of what I would consider to be a relatively divided group of people, and sort of watch how the season unfolded. And as it unfolded, it was a pretty excellent experience. It was a fun hunting season. Spent a lot of time in the stand, filming and hunting. And I would film Dustin would film me, Matt would film both of us, and he and his family facilitated us hunting in a lot of areas that we wouldn't have had access to. So that's a major part of the story that doesn't come across in the film, but we just sort of took our own experiences and tried to bring them to the screen as we sort of our view on hunting and deer hunting itself evolved over the course of the season, and we found we sort of looked for the common ground that we could find and came to realize that the common ground is pretty substantial at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Is there anything more you'd add to that, Dustin?
Yeah, I guess this hunt happened. I would say a half year after we brought Aaron on. It was our first deer season hunting together. My passion's always been whitetails, so we'd had the conversation quite a bit leading up to it. Aaron always being a gun hunter in the past, and me growing up as a trophy bow hunter ever since a little kid with my dad, and that's never changed. So talking about the differences and going out and hunting, and I'm always very serious, very cautious when I go out. Aaron likes to have a good time and joke around, and I got to enjoy that quite a bit. And at the same time, it got on the nerves quite a bit at the same time. And it was a good experience. And like Aaron said, you know, in the end of it, we had the same, I guess, the same thoughts and same passion at the very end when it comes down to it. But our differences were very obvious throughout the season, especially being in the tree. And yeah, it was well worth the experience.
Yeah, but
it's very real. Like the differences are very real. It's not like, oh, let's contrive this cute little opposite story. It was we'd be walking into the stand and I would pull out a can of vanilla scented nose jammer and just make it rain. and Dustin would look at me like, bro, you know, like, what are you doing? And I'd be filming and like filming squirrels and stuff, because to me it's like, well, I'm out here when I have fun, but yeah, we definitely have different viewpoints as to how to maximize our experience. But that was very real. I don't want anyone to think that it wasn't, because it was, and I think that really lent a lot of power to the story.
So that, you know, tying into that, this was your first season, or that, you know, the season filmed in Game of Inches was your first season hunting in this kind of area, Aaron, it sounded like. Can you tell us about what that first, you know, couple hunts or few weeks hunting in Kansas was like? I imagine it was quite a difference from what you're used to.
I mean, the big difference with deer hunting in Kansas is that you see deer. Like, that was a tremendous change, right? Like, I guess I'd killed 5 or 6 deer, you know, in my hunting lifetime before I'd come down here, and I had a pretty good string of luck. You know, I'd been relatively successful, and I'm not afraid to attribute it to luck at all. You know, I'd been in the right place at the right time and made the most of my opportunities. But coming down here, you know, like at home, every time that I saw a deer, I shot at it. Every time. If I saw a deer, there was no like evaluation, there was no consideration. It was safety off, crosshairs settle, and just start raising cane with the 30-06. And like, and we usually hunted tight woods and stood on the ground, you know, hunted from the ground a fair bit. We would hunt stands. We do deer drives, and usually things were moving and fast-paced. So you see a deer, you act immediately. And taking a step back in Kansas and being able to be a spectator was incredible. You know, spending the amount of time that I did with deer and seeing them, and you know, it's nothing to see a half dozen deer in a sit or a dozen deer. And you know, one of my first sits, I saw more deer here than I had hunting my entire lifetime in one, you know, 3-hour time in the stand. So that's just an incredible change of pace. It's truly unfathomable. Like, you can't wrap your head around it. And even as I go home and tell friends and family, you know, what hunting's like, even with footage to back it up, like, they really can't believe the way that it works. And obviously the animals here are intelligent and they're hard to hunt, but I just don't think that the level of, and I mean, this is not going to be a popular comment, but I don't think that the level of like top to bottom absolute terror exists within them. Like up north, you know, we have wolves. We have a lot of predation. We have a crazy amount of wild hunting pressure during the 2 weeks of the season. So there's just like, you can't get away with anything. Whereas here it was fun because, you know, you could be in the stand, you could whisper a little bit, you know, they were so comfortable and you're able to be such a passive aspect of the equation. It was pretty unique and lot.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, you know, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I grew up hunting in northern Michigan, and it was a similar situation to yours, Aaron, where our family, it was just go up there deer camp during gun season, and if it's brown, it's down, and you didn't see many deer at all. And so if someone shot a forkhorn, that was a big deal, and that was excitement, And then when I came down here and started hunting other states like Iowa or Ohio, just totally night and day the way the deer act, the types of deer you see, the number of deer you see, the bucks you see. It's just so drastically different that it's at first kind of mind-blowing.
And they're so big. Like, the bodies are small, but the antlers are so big. Like, to me, anything that, as soon as there's more than 3 points, it basically overwhelms my judgment system. So, like, I can walk into a trophy room and be like, oh, yeah, it's a nice 170. But if I'm in the woods and it's something that's just, like, as many points as I have fingers, it's just game over. It's just, like, immediately it, like, hits my threshold. And so it's been tough, because with the responsibility of hunting on other people's areas and not having the land access that I normally would, I had to be conscientious about, making sure that the deer that I would potentially harvest was one that was responsible within the grand scheme of things. And
was that hard for you?
Oh, hell yeah, it was hard for me. Like this season, and this wasn't in the film, but I passed. I don't know, like I would guess it was 150, 160 inch deer that I thought, honestly, and having like watched it, and once I came to the realization that I couldn't kill it, was maybe 2 or 3. Like, it was a little tiny deer with just like this 6x5 knifing set of antlers that to me looked like it was, and it just come out of the grass with just antlers flying all over the place, and I'm sitting in a tree just like, well, this is the biggest deer I've ever seen hunting. I once in my younger days, actually, we had a big buck contest in my home county, and I shot a deer that we measured by body weight, and it dressed out at 225 pounds, and I think it was, it netted 132, so it might have been 140s kind of deer. And it was like Goliath, it was like this unbelievable specimen of a deer that I'd happened to, somehow cross paths with, and my dad and I closed the deal on. And this deer that I passed this year was, would have dwarfed it. It would have made it like I needed to take it off the wall size, and I was just watching it, sniff around and run around my tree, and that's not something that is easy to adjust to, right? The logic there, deer hunting is very emotional. Hunting is very emotional. That's part of why we love it so much. And you get in a situation like that where it's right there. It's not a decision. It's very difficult for me to take a step back like Dustin, so I went and assess, does he have a broken G1? Or like, what's his belly line look like? Or how old is he? To me, it's just like, well, that's big, like, and it's a deer, so like I'm here to kill it. Like, that's kind of the goal, So it was a big adjustment.
So I was wondering, as you were talking about this a little bit earlier, what was your goal going into this season, Aaron, or what was your standard? I'd be curious to hear from Aaron, you first, and then Dustin, I'd like to hear what your standards were too, because I saw, as we saw in the film, you passed on a lot of deer, and in the end didn't fill that tag. Would love to hear a little bit about that too, but I guess, Aaron, first with you, what were your goals and standards for that season?
My standards, I think that when it comes time to kill an animal, when it's right. By the way you feel and the way that things are interacting, and it's not necessarily, for me anyways, not very closely tied necessarily to the size of the animal or anything like that. Like the deer that I was most excited about, which you can see in the film, was a tiny little 10-point, but I stalked it for, Matt was filming at the time, stalked it for, probably 400 or 500 yards, and I was within, probably 40 yards of it on my stomach, but it was bedded, so I couldn't take the shot, and eventually they made us out and ran off, and I didn't get a shot at the buck. But to me, that was like an insane experience. Adrenaline was crazy, nothing between me and the deer in the wide open spaces. Like that was a completely unique experience for me, and it was incredibly exciting. So that deer, nobody would have batted an eye at it, but to me, that was probably the pinnacle of the season. And the deer that I did kill, being up north and not having the time being exposed to deer that growing up that many of the people that will be listening to this have had, I'd never seen deer really rutting, right? Like I've never heard a deer grunt in the woods, never seen them fight. All of those fun little bits of interaction that we cherish, I'd never seen that. So the deer that I killed, it's difficult to pick up in the film, but it was grunting and harassing does and everything else. And to me, that was my goal. It was something that was new. It was something that was exciting. And it was a unique experience. It wasn't necessarily something that was like clockwork that I was expecting to happen, or it was an animal of a certain size. It was just a new, fun experience. And I had an opportunity, to kill that deer, and luckily I did.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Now, what about for you, Dustin?
I would say my goal for that season was to harvest any mature deer, and mature for me is usually a solid 5-year-old deer or better. Size wasn't necessarily an issue. I just wanted to make sure it was mature. I did also add to the challenge. I was hunting the whole year with a recurve as well. First time I've ever gone a full whitetail season, only traditional, and that definitely added a lot more to the challenge than I expected. Earlier in the season, I did pass a nice 4.5-year-old deer, 160s. He's one of the deer in the video. I kind of regretted that later because it was, I think, a week and a half, 2 weeks later, the neighbor shot the deer. So after that happened, you kind of regret passing a deer. But later in the season, later in November, one thing that's not in the video is I did actually shoot at a deer or a buck that season, and ended up hitting a pencil-sized limb. Aaron was filming that one, and that deer was probably only a 3-year-old. Nice rack, but the situation was right. It's getting later in the year, and I was ready. And it didn't happen. Adding that extra little bit of the challenge, the recurve and traditional definitely added to it that year. So,
yeah, I can't imagine. That's it's bow hunting in general is an awful tough game on its own, let alone going to traditional equipment and closing that maximum range so much. So props to you for trying that. Are you?
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Did you try it in subsequent years? Are you going to keep on doing that?
I did not this last year. It comes down to my confidence and the amount of time I have to practice. Last year we were pretty busy with work, and so I took advantage with the time I could and just went out with my compound again. And I didn't have success there either. It's just one of those things where since I was going back to the compound, I kind of upped my, I wanted the age limit, but I also wanted a certain size class, and that's just part of the game for me. And I don't have a problem not filling a buck tag. It's just that extra challenge of getting that mature deer means that much more to me. But during the game of inches, seeing Aaron's excitement and remembering when I had that excitement, it made me, when that 3-year-old came in, I had been hunting with Aaron plenty throughout that season. I was like, all right, I know if I shoot that deer, I'm happy, and that's all that matters. So definitely a big lesson I learned there.
Yeah. So sort of related to that, listening to you guys talk about all these different things and your differing goals and standards and what you're looking for in the hunt, I think this all ties into a lot of the different themes that I pulled out of watching the film myself. But if you guys could boil it down to one big takeaway that you wanted somebody watching that film to have, what would that be? And then from there, I want to dive into a few of the other topics too related to that. And I guess Aaron, if you want to start.
I mean, I think the final line of the film which, I'm still very proud of, and will always, even move me, is the great takeaway, right? We are all hunting for the exact same thing, and that is an experience and a level of satisfaction and a level of pride and a volume of, a quantifiable gain, regardless what that is, whether it's meat or antlers or, it's really immaterial. We're all out there and we're all doing it fundamentally at its core for the same reason. That embodies itself in different ways, and people villainize each other over it. What do you use as a weapon? Where do you hunt? How do you hunt? There's so many different ways and lenses through which people judge one another. And obviously, it's a challenging and dynamic world. There are always going to be people that do things different than you are, whether you're deer hunting, whether you're stuck in a traffic jam, whether you're in a business environment. But at the end of the day, you be cognizant of other people's upbringings, be cognizant of other people's experiences. And whenever you have an opportunity to share something like Dustin and I shared, and an opportunity to go and hunt and have that experience, don't waste time worrying about who does what or how they do that, or admiring people for some quantifiable measure, when fundamentally the guy that goes out and has everything line up and shoots a 200-inch deer, and the 10-year-old kid that goes out and whacks a fawn with his rifle, they're doing the same thing. And any time and any effort that's spent worrying about that is completely futile, and it's disrespectful to the animals themselves. It's disrespectful to sport, and it's extremely counterproductive. We're in a world as hunters that is, realistically under some degree of threat, and the idea that any of us would spend any time in fighting in regards to what the right or best or most appropriate way to do something is absolutely asinine. And I guess, I'm going to go at it with stronger words now than I would have in the film, but, we need to sort of take a step back and look at what we're really fighting for, and realize, as the last line of the film says, we're all hunting for the exact same thing.
Yeah. Dustin, would you add anything else to that?
I would say that's absolutely right. I mean, there's so much bickering within the hunting industry and the hunting community between, different types of hunters, whether you hunt with a rifle, a crossbow, muzzleloader, or, traditional archery, compound archery. There's so much bickering between individual groups and type of hunters that, it's kind of making us weaker as a community. That doesn't need to be there. And I'd say, exactly like the last line, we're all after the same thing. Support each other. If you're happy with your decision, that's all that matters. And we just all need to support each other. So,
yeah, I really took a lot of the same things from watching it myself too, and I really appreciated the message you guys were trying to get across, because as you both mentioned, it's something that's so important right now, especially given we have so many detractors on the outside that don't want us to be able to do what we like to do and hunt, but we don't need any more people within, tearing each other apart either. So there's so much truth to that. But gosh, there was a handful of other themes in addition to that. There were a lot of deep topics that we could talk about here that are running through my mind. But I'm curious, Dan, you've been a little quiet over there. What was for you? What was the big takeaway for you after watching Game of Inches?
Well, I think it kind of reminded me. I had a bit of an antler jealousy spell myself, and it kind of reminded me that that jealousy is just wasted energy that should be focused on myself and my goals as far as getting a hunt, and not being jealous because somebody else was shooting a quote unquote bigger buck than me. I work real hard. I put a lot of time, just like everybody does. And, I was getting frustrated with myself saying, why can't I make it, why can't I put it together and harvest a mature deer? And I forgot why I do this in the first place. And that this film was a little bit of a reminder to me saying, it's not about the size of the antlers. It's not about killing a mature buck. It's about the experiences and the stories and the memories and all that stuff. So it was a good reminder to me. And that's one of the takeaways from the film.
Yeah, something you said there, Dan, ties into another one of the things that was mentioned sort of in the beginning of the film. I think it was by you, Aaron, when you were discussing your initial experiences coming to a slightly different deer hunting culture in Kansas. And you guys talked about, with all the hunting media today and Facebook and all the social media, everyone is seeing all these great big bucks that everybody else is killing, and there's almost this new competition of the hunt, almost, where everyone's trying to one up the other person or post a bigger picture or have the greater quote unquote trophy. Can you talk a little bit about that, Aaron? What your experiences were seeing that kind of for the first time, and then what you think about this kind of changing dynamic in the hunting community related to that?
Fundamentally, as humans, we're always going to be competitive. That's a huge part, psychologically of how we make up, what our psyche's made of and what's been able to allow us to survive over the years. But for me to see that in such a sharp contrast to what I was raised with, it was kind of confusing, because the way that I was raised and the way that I was introduced to hunting was simply, if somebody shot a big buck, it was like a stampede of, orange, like moderately overweight orange guys trundling through the woods, just trying to find our way to the shot. Because you hear the shot, and sometimes you'd hear a guy yell, or you'd get there'd be somebody'd let you know, or the dog or the guy running the chase would hear the size of the deer, they'd see it, or hear on the radio or whatever. And it was just like an all-out procession. It was a complete team effort. And maybe a big part of that is we have a cabin that's tucked back in the woods, and we put all the antlers from all the deer that we shoot together up in that cabin, and we nail them to the wall. We just saw it out of the forehead and nail it to the wall, and take out a pencil and write out the year and the place, and underneath the year and underneath the place there's the name of the hunter, because the deer comes first, the time comes first, the location, the environment comes next, and then at the very bottom of it, it's the guy that pulled the trigger, because really it's the material. And the thing that I saw that was frustrating is, obviously people are going to, I would love to shoot a big deer someday. I'd love to look up on my wall at a gigantic whitetail. That's something that, obviously everyone wants. But you look at it situationally. If you live in northern Michigan like you did, you're not going to shoot as big a deer as you do in Kansas. And when we hunt in Kansas and we hunt land that we have permission on, or we hunt public land, we're not going to shoot as big a deer as the people that have leases. And there's so many extenuating circumstances, so many of them are tied to finances, that it's impossible to compare yourself to other people, yet here we are doing it, right? Like, what's going to enable someone to shoot a bigger deer than I do next season? They could work harder. They could be better hunters. They could get lucky, which is something that people seem to refuse to acknowledge. And I respect all three of those things, right? Like, I respect hard work, and I understand that those are obviously big factors. But beyond that, maybe they had, a couple extra grand to throw at bait and trail cameras. And maybe they had, a couple extra weeks of vacation time. And maybe they had, even more money to throw at a lease. And maybe, it goes on and on and on. And so many of these things are financial or circumstantial that go so far outside of somebody's hunting prowess. And even then, if you shoot a 6.5-year-old deer that's 135 inch, heavy, gnarly 8-point, or you shoot a 6.5-year-old deer that's 230 inches, are you a better hunter because that deer's bigger? Right? Like, that's a very real question. And to me, the answer is absolutely not. I don't think that there's an incremental amount of intelligence or challenge that comes with antler size. It's simply a byproduct of age. So, we should be, if we're going to be competing, pulling the teeth out of our deer, sending them in and posting up the lab results on Facebook if we want to be showcasing our abilities as a hunter, but nobody does that, right? So it's kind of funny to me that it's this arms race of something that doesn't actually quantify any level of hunter capability.
Yeah, it's excuse me. It's something that seems to, this exact thing is happening more and more every year as the proliferation of media expands, and it just becomes so much easier for anyone to put it out there. But I'm curious for you, Dustin. I know you've had some experience with hunting TV and now Rockhouse Motion, and what do you feel about the overall impact that the growing influence of hunting media is having on hunters and our expectations and how we, relate to each other?
Right. Well, I do feel, a lot of it's definitely ego-driven, and it always will be as far as that goes. But one thing that bugs me, especially with the social media, is how it affects the youth and the upcoming hunters. You get a kid out there who's 12 and shoots his first first deer with a bow and it's a spike or a forkhorn, and he's ashamed to put it up on social networking or, you know, show it to his buddies, even if it's just a picture, simply because of all the big deer out there and the inches game. And like Aaron said, that's not what it's about. You know, an older deer is probably more of a trophy than just inches, but even that doesn't matter. You know, if you're happy with what you shot, you know, be happy about it. Don't be ashamed. And I wish that could change on social media. I don't know how to make that change, but, you know, as far as the youth go, if I was to speak directly to them, don't be ashamed. Shoot what makes you happy. If you want to shoot a button buck, if you want to shoot a doe, shoot what you want. That's how you grow as a hunter. And yeah, so that's my take as far as the social media is. I hate how it gives people a guilty feeling if they, or, you know, makes them feel like they're unsuccessful. It's not what other people think. It's what you think.
Yeah. Dan and I have had this exact conversation. I think we're right in line with you guys in that in the end, it does come down to your own personal goals and satisfaction and the experience, and whether you're judging your success by, you know, the meat you put in your freezer or how old the deer is or whatever it might be. You know, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. Make your own decisions and be happy with that. And you know, on the other hand, though, to your point too, there is something to be said about, you know, targeting older deer or bigger deer or challenging yourself in whatever way you seem fit. Now, I'm curious. I think, Aaron, you mentioned a bit on this, but Dustin, maybe I'll start with you here. What do you think for someone who wants to challenge themselves and wants to take the hunt to the next level? How should they be setting their expectations? Would you recommend they focus just on age, or should they be pushing themselves on some other criteria? What's the right way, in your opinion, to push yourself and set expectations for that next level of hunting goals and standards?
I would say that's completely up to the individual, where they are as far as past hunting success. I mean, for me, just looking back in the past, you know, growing up from a young teenager through high school, through college, it was always a slow, steady raise in inches. And then, you know, it got to be an age class thing. And then, you know, after I had enough Pope and Young animals in the book, and it came down to really whatever made me happy. And then, you know, if you get bored, change something up. You know, you don't ever want to get bored. That should never happen, which is where, you know, I picked up traditional archery, and it was completely new. I had that excitement that I had when I was young again, and it brought it all back to me. And now even with the compound, I still get the same excitement. It rejuvenated my hunting passion, and that's what everyone's goal should be. Keep yourself excited. You know, whenever you succeed, if you're not excited, you did something wrong. So as far as your goal, make it something that once you succeed and you've reached that goal, you're beyond thrilled about it.
Yeah, that's so important. It's easy sometimes to get so focused in numbers or whatever other criteria we set, and we forget to just have fun. So
right.
That's a great reminder. Now, what about you, Aaron? Coming from a different background, did you gain a new perspective on setting those standards for yourself or in the future?
Well, what I was able to do is understand how people are able to think that way. In the past, it was sort of inconceivable, but now that I know with the volume of deer, you know, if you go out and shoot the first thing you see, your season's going to be literally 1 day long every time, you know. So there's a luxury to be able to choose and set your goals more lawfully than just harvesting a deer, which is something I wasn't exposed to. So I don't want it to be something where I'm necessarily against trophy hunting, because I'm not really against anything as far as a specific way of somebody recognizing their own goals. But basically what my advice would be to a deer hunter, whether they're a trophy hunter or a neophyte, is try and set your goals within the realm of something that you can control. So don't set your goals around, I want to shoot a 200-inch deer, because there's a good chance that no matter what you do, a 200-inch deer isn't going to show up on your farm. And if you're sitting there begrudging the fact that there's not an animal like that, well, you know, how can you fix that? Obviously, there's circumstances you can't control. I'm not saying that, you know, you only set your goals on things that absolutely will happen. But if there's a 200-inch deer and you want to kill him, fine, set that goal. But if you don't set thresholds for yourself that are unattainable with the resources that you have available. So the way that I do that, personally, knowing that I'm not going to have a ton of time to hunt, knowing that I don't, you know, with the way that things are with rockers, knowing that I don't have the land access, that I would like to have, and the time and energy to devote to things. I just want to shoot things in a way that's a little bit different. Like, I would love to rattle a deer in on the ground and kill it. That's cool to me. You know, being on eye level, eye to eye, calling a deer in. I'm a huge waterfowl hunter, so I love that interaction. That to me is you know, maybe the pinnacle. So if that's my goal next season, obviously that's isolated to a certain time of year, but that's the kind of thing that it doesn't matter what kind of ground I have or what side to hunt or what side of deer I'm after. It's that experience and that unique thing, and that just like hard charging adrenaline rush that sort of is at the core of it all. That's what I would suggest people strive for. Find that one thing that's a little maybe unorthodox or maybe not, but it's attainable, and it's something that challenges you in a new way.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, you know, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co, and make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
That's a cool idea. I like that a lot. Another thing you said too, Aaron, that I think is an important reminder, and something that I just wrote about for outdoor life, is about setting expectations based on your circumstances. So if you do decide you want to set some type of goal or standard, take a look at where you hunt and set those standards based on, like you said, Aaron, what's attainable in that region or given your circumstances, and not necessarily base your goals off of what you see, Lee and Tiffany doing in Iowa. If you live in New Hampshire, you're probably going to be pretty disappointed if you're setting those types of standards. So I talked to Dr. Grant Woods, who a lot of us know is a great whitetail expert, and one of the things he recommended we do is take a look at what types of deer your region or your county is producing, and if you do want to challenge yourself to try to target those more difficult deer to hunt, maybe try to find out what the top 25% in age class might be for that region, or if you're into antlers, figure out what that top 10% of antlers of deer being harvested in that area might be, and set goals based on that. But saying something arbitrarily based off of TV, that seems to be a recipe for disaster. Now, tying into that, when we start talking about antlers and the focus on antlers that, inevitably happens when you have big bucks on TV and on the front covers of magazines and across videos and websites and all the above, I think we're all guilty of it to some degree of right, we love big deer. They get us excited. They're fun to see. They're incredible animals. But what I want to talk about is, are we going too far? And is trophy hunting, quote unquote trophy hunting, is it getting to be to a dangerous point? And I don't know if I have an answer to that, but I'm curious. Maybe I'll start with you, Dustin, given the fact that you have more of a background to that. Do you think that the antler craze has gone too far yet?
Too far yet? I would say it's there, yeah, and it's going to keep getting worse. There's the high fence deer, and the deer being raised to be 300-400 inches, and that's something I'm not into. Some people love it. It's an individual thing. I don't know where the stopping point is or how it would ever stop. I think at some point, once people get over the fact there's too many deer, maybe that's what's going to slow it down, that there's just big deer everywhere, and then it's the experience again. That's my hope. I don't know where or how to stop that, but I do believe that the antler craze and the inches gain is definitely over the top. People doing things that are not necessarily legal to get animals of that size, or they'll do anything to get that deer. It's there, and I don't think it's going to slow down.
And to your point, it's getting to the point where people are doing unethical things sometimes, or they're damaging relationships with friends and family because of it. I think that's a scary thing that we're seeing. What do you think, Aaron, from your perspective on that?
I think that trophy hunting is sort of not to get too big picture here, but it's an extension of an overall societal trend to value results over the process. And I think that what's important to me personally is the process. If I climb a mountain, it's not, holy shit, I made it to this, or holy smokes, sorry, I made it to the summit. It's like, remember falling and scraping your knee and getting back up and drinking water, at sunrise and taking that moment to catch your breath. And if it's a job, it's not about the paycheck. It's about the experience and the stuff that you learn along the way. And, I think that trophy hunting is just like a really concentrated example of that, where people are completely losing sight of what it takes to get there and focusing on the end result. And I think that's a danger in any aspect of life as much as it is hunting. And I think that, if it makes somebody happy, it's not going to be a problem. But like you said, when it comes to damaging family relationships, professional relationships, breaking the law, people get so crazed with finding, I guess the environment has created such a craze around these antlers and giant deer that people are foregoing the process and focusing on the result. And I think that's a mistake and a danger.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. And this kind of brings me to something that I've been chewing on for a while myself. I've been meaning to write something about this, and I'm planning on it. But I guess I'll kind of spit out my off the top of the head thoughts on this and maybe get your guys' ideas on this. And I realize this isn't possible because it's so ingrained in just our vernacular and our vocabulary. But if I could, I would love to remove the term trophy hunting from our overall vocabulary. Personally, my personal opinion, because I feel like, to your point, Aaron, just the terminology itself, not actually what people are doing, but just the terminology, it focuses on exactly that same thing that you said, Aaron. It focuses on the end goal and not the process, and it focuses on this idea of this deer being boiled down to nothing but a set of antlers that goes on the wall, and not being the meat that we feed our families with, and all the experiences and all the work and all the time and everything that went into that. I worry that just that terminology, especially when viewed from the outside, when someone who doesn't understand hunting, when they see someone talking about trophy hunters, they think that we're just, willy-nilly killing animals to put their horns on the wall. And I think that devalues the hunt, it devalues the animal, and it devalues the entire experience and everything that we love about hunting. So my little personal rant for the day is I wish we could get rid of that word and maybe say something else. Maybe it's challenging hunting or mature buck hunting or whatever it might be. I don't know what the different, better option could be that I might use, but I don't know. Am I crazy? What do you think, Aaron? Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. I mean, when the Super Bowl, the highlight of the whole thing isn't getting a ring put on their finger at the end of it. Right, and I think that that's kind of the insinuation with trophy hunting. Is it's like, oh, I'm going to hang this thing up on the wall. When you go to university, it's not like, oh, I'm diploma hunting, right, or degree hunting. It's just like, yes, hung it up. This is the highlight, right? It's the keg parties and the stuff you might happen to learn along the way that really define it. And yeah, I think that you're 100% right, and I think it's especially dangerous from the perspective that you're talking about from the outside. I have a lot of people say to me through the various exposures that I've had, oh, well, as long as you don't trophy hunt, because they associate that with climbing up a mountain and or doing whatever you do, going as far as shooting an animal and then hacking out the antlers and leaving the rest to waste. And I think that's absolutely the insinuation. And however untrue as it may be, that's the insinuation to the broader public. And I think that you're 100% right. That if we were to sort of remove that term and the negative association outside of the community, I think it'd be a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah. What do you think, Dustin, from your perspective? I mean, and I can't claim to not have ever, used that terminology either myself. I mean, I target mature bucks and I pay attention to age and inches and all those different things just like you. But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I would agree. I mean, in the perfect world, there wouldn't be trophy hunting. I mean, it'd almost be called memory hunting or something like that. When I look at a deer on a wall of my own, it's not just looking at the size of the deer. Each deer I look at, I can tell you exactly what happened during that hunt or that whole entire year. What made up that whole memory, and that's the important thing. What makes that a trophy to you individually? When people hear the term trophy hunting, they automatically think of inches. I wish that wasn't the case. But I don't know. Like I said, memory hunting would be cool, but I don't think anyone would ever call that because it doesn't sound too cool.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although I have tried. I recently wrote something on the blog, and I mentioned that these antlers would hang into what a lot of people call their trophy room, and I'm going to start calling it my memory room. I'm going to try to start the trend with a little baby step there. But,
there you go.
But Dan, what do you think about all this?
I just think it's up to the hunter themselves to determine what the trophy actually is, because there's a lot of people out there, and I know a couple of them who think that because they kill a big buck, it makes them special, or it makes them, like Aaron said, a better hunter than the next guy, when it doesn't mean crap. Just because you killed a deer with a bigger rack doesn't make you better than the next guy, because guess what? Next year, no one will remember that you shot a big buck. No one cares. So I just feel that it's one of those things where you have to live your life and hunt the way you hunt. And yes, it's awesome to congratulate and show emotion towards somebody else being successful, but you got to worry about yourself.
Yeah, so true. So true. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about antlers and the idea of setting your own personal goals and some different thoughts on the trophy hunting aspect of things. But what about the meat hunting side of the story, especially recently? And Dan and I talked about this just a little bit before the two of you joined us. But recently there's been an increased amount of excitement, maybe, about the meat eating aspect of hunting, especially now with the increase of interest from people outside of the traditional hunting community. Lots of quote-unquote hipster hunters, people wanting to get into it because of the ability to harvest organic, free-range meat and be close to your food. I'd be curious to hear both of your perspectives on this renewed interest on the meat eating side of things. Maybe Dustin, could you give me a couple thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great trend. There's nothing that means more than eating your own venison that you got yourself. You know exactly where it came from. No preservatives. Like you said, the hipster type hunting, it's great. It's always been about that. That's how it started in the past. It should be that way, and yeah, I'm excited to see that trend picking up, and hopefully it keeps going that way. It should always be, regardless of what the animal is, even if it is, a great big buck, that meat should not go to waste and should be cherished regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Aaron, from your perspective of kind of starting out that way and still focusing maybe primarily on that? What do you think about this new wave of interest?
I've been lucky in my life to have been exposed to a lot of different types of people, a lot of different groups of people, and I've been super fortunate to be able to introduce a lot of friends who would never have had an opportunity to hunt into doing it. And the thing that they're always most proud of, and the sort of culminating moment for them, almost on top of the kill itself, is whenever we sit down for dinner and with friends and family, and we serve whatever it was that they harvested, whether that was a duck or a goose or a grouse or a pheasant or a turkey or a deer. that is the culminating moment. And as far as the hipster hunters are concerned, I work extremely hard to keep my opinions to myself in the social media space for personal sanity and professional longevity. But I recently was basically to the point where I felt I needed to, like people so often do, felt I needed to contribute to a situation where somebody was begrudging the influx of hipster hunters, or that's the term that goes with it. And I just thought that was audacious and insane. And I would love to go on the record and say that anyone who is unwilling to accept an influx of new sportsmen, maybe because they don't share the same socioeconomic situation or the same style or the same political beliefs or the same religious beliefs or the same cultural background, that is absolutely counterproductive to the overall health of our sport and the health of our environment. If you're getting people that can be passionate about this, that's one more person that's on board with conservation, that's on board with hunting, and that's willing, to share in the thing that we care about the most. Anyone that's defensive of that, or is against that, or is finding a way to view this as a negative, in my opinion, truly needs to reassess what it is that they actually look for when they take to the field. Because the way that my worldview and my view of hunting is that every single person that wants to do it and is willing to play within the rules and has a set of personal ethics is the very most welcome. Of course, it's frustrating when I go set up a duck blind and somebody that isn't as experienced sets me up downwind in the air. If I'm deer hunting and there's a new tree stand on a spot I've always loved to hunt, of course that's frustrating. But at the end of the day, try and think big picture. And I think that the food being at the center of this is only natural. Like Dustin said, it's something I've experienced several times, and anyone that can view this as a negative is being really counterproductive in regards to the overall context of the industry and the community.
I'm glad you went on the record saying that, Aaron, and let me join you, as I 100% absolutely completely agree with you on that. And I just think it's insane that some people would want to, like you said, begrudge anyone new coming into this community. So I am welcoming all quote unquote hipster hunters to the game. Join us. It's an amazing thing to be a part of, and I hope any and all people, young, old, man, woman, rural and urban, I think anyone that wants to experience this should absolutely feel comfortable doing so. And I would put it out to all of us deer hunters to take it on ourselves as a responsibility to help anyone who's looking for that guidance, because a lot of these people getting into hunting late in the game, they don't have a parent that's experienced with that, or a lot of these people growing up in an urban situation don't have friends that are experienced with hunting and acquiring their own food and meat in this way. And so it's our responsibility to try to do that ourselves and help those people. So,
absolutely, well said.
So that said, I think we're coming up here on time. I want to be respectful of your guys' of your schedules and whatnot. So I've got one final question for you, and this was brought up, I think, again by you, Aaron, in the film. You talked about this different experience down there in Kansas, where you were seeing, the trail cameras documenting deer, and you were seeing, you're picking apart these deer pixel by pixel, and there's food plots, and there's all these different management things going on, almost agricultural nature of raising deer and hunting them, almost cultivating deer in some way. Now that you've had some experience with that, can you give me a little bit of your thoughts on what that was like, and where you kind of stand on the management of deer so intensively? Or is that something you've come to terms with, or is that still a weird thing?
I think to me, it's personally, it's weird, but it's definitely something that I have a lot of respect for. There's some people that have an incredible connection with the deer herd. I mean, Matt and his brothers have an understanding of the local deer population that I can't begin to wrap my head around. We'll find a shed, and within 6 hours, one of them will produce a trail camera photo and say, "Oh yeah, this is, Bucky from 7 years ago," and went missing, and we found his shed 3 miles south, and now he's 2 miles, we found the shed 2 miles from where I passed on him as a 3-year-old, and it's incredible depth of knowledge that I have a ton of respect for. For me, it's not how I hunt. I don't think I can see myself investing that amount of time in it in the future, because I love duck hunting, I love goose hunting, and I love, a huge broad variety of outdoor activities. So I can't imagine going all in on something like that to that extent. But I definitely have respect for people that do it, and I understand the attraction of it. It's an amazing feeling to have such a great connection with the deer herd, and it's probably not something I'll pursue, but it's certainly something that I respect, as strange as I may consider it to be.
So I think that'll probably put us in a good position to probably wrap this whole thing up, though. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think we've covered, some really important topics that a lot of people really should be thinking about. These are things that are going on, and these are things that as each individual hunter, I think it's important that we think through and chew on. And something you said earlier, Aaron, about the importance of, in the context you were talking about is new hunters joining the fold. But I think everyone should really have a personal ethic when it comes to hunting. And I think all these things tie into what each person's personal ethic will be, how they go about setting their standards and their motivations and all those things. It really comes down to a personal choice, but really thinking about that beforehand. So I'm glad we could talk about these things. Dan, I'm curious for you. Do you have any final question for Aaron or Dustin before we let them go?
One thing I'm curious with is you guys are, at two opposite ends of the spectrum in your hunting career, or I shouldn't say career, but on two different paths. And I'd like to know what your guys' goals are moving forward. And I'll start with Dustin, and I'm just kind of curious, as a quote unquote trophy hunter, and you take age class into consideration, how much longer? What's the next change that you're going to do? Let's say you shoot a big mature buck the next 5 years. What's next? What's the next thing you're going to try to change? Are you going to try a different species? And then Aaron, what's your goal for 2015?
To start that out, I would say, I'm always open to anything new. I've yet to harvest a mature whitetail in Kansas, so that's still my continuing goal. Once that's met, I'll obviously change something up, whether, when I do harvest a buck in Kansas, if it's with a compound, I may, switch back to traditional, or, if I do shoot one with traditional, I'll try and make it a more mature deer, or, it just comes down to the situation. When that deer is in front of me, and if it's something different, something unique, something that I know is going to make a new memory for me, then I'm going to take that opportunity and, make the best of it. Same thing with, hunting new areas, whether I, choose to go up to Alaska, or if I want to go out into the mountains and chase elk or mule deer, whatever is a new experience, it's always going to be a new story. And a new memory for me. So that's what my next challenge will be, is to always make the memory something that stands out in my mind when I look at that animal, whether it's on my wall or when I'm eating it. I just want to know what all went into it.
That's awesome. And Aaron?
For me personally, this past year I didn't shoot a deer, so I'd like to shoot a deer. That's pretty much the extent of my personal goals as far as from a hunting standpoint. But beyond that, we have an exceptional platform here at Rockhouse to tell great stories. And my fundamental passion as a person, whether it's in a podcast like this one, in a film, in a written story, a photograph, is to tell stories. And I want to be able to create and to share those stories through whatever medium with as many people as I can. I'd love to get my dad down here and exposed to to the deer hunting in Kansas. I'd love to introduce some friends of mine to turkey hunting. I'd love to, continue, with my background as a waterfowl hunter, to introduce Matt and Dustin deeper and deeper into the world of waterfowl hunting. I thrive in a community environment. I love having stories that I can sit down with somebody and reminisce upon. I was in the stand with Matt this past year as he shot a tremendous buck that I basically just was paralyzed by and was unable to film due to the fact that I didn't think it was real. Like it was nuts. And he smoked that, and to see Matt, who's so calculating and so often it has shot some ridiculous deer over the years, to sit there and just watch him just shake was, to me, so far superior if I had that opportunity myself, because you get to see people that the big deer would mean more to him than it would to me. And and that being able to share that with him as my friend and capture the recovery, which will be this next year, something that will be pushed out through Sika's channels. And that's what I care about. It's that story. It's enriching the story and creating something to reflect upon and challenging myself. And it's pretty vague and pretty broad, but it's another story. That's always what we're hunting for. And hopefully, if things continue as they are, people will enjoy when we get a chance to tell them to Rockhouse.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to those stories in the future. And for those that want to either watch Game of Inches or be aware of whatever's new coming down the line for you guys, where can people go to get that and get more information about you guys?
Facebook, Instagram are both great sources as far as the day-to-day behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, you'll see some of our better images. You'll see some fun images. You'll get an idea of who we are as people. You can follow us personally as well. We'll be easy to find. But, yeah, at Rockhouse Motion on Instagram, Rockhouse Motion on Facebook. And if you want to see the breadth of our work, we have an account on Vimeo, Rockhouse Motion on there, and on 500 pixels for our stills images. And we just like making cool stuff, and hopefully people find a way to enjoy it, whether they're sportsmen or not. And we love to hear from everybody. So if you have thoughts on this or any other work that we've ever done, just shoot us, personally, me or Dustin, an email, Aaron@rockhousemotion.com, Dustin@rockhousemotion.com. We're always open to hearing what people think and hearing stories, because we're in a very unique medium where we get to tell stories, but they go out through the internet, and we never get to hear the impact that they have on people. And when we do, it's usually pretty profound. So positive or negative, in agreement or disagreement, we love to hear from everybody. So however you want to engage, please look us up. It's been a fun ride, and I hope that it continues. And it's fun to have an opportunity like today to discuss with some like-minded individuals who also, may have some different opinions, but we can open a fun discussion like this one. And I speak on behalf of Dustin. I'm pretty confident in myself that this is something that we very much enjoyed and been challenged by this discussion. And thanks to you guys. Congratulations on the Outdoor Life cover and the 50th podcast.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to you for having us on, as well as all of the companies and sponsors that we have and the people who supported us to be able to do what we do, because it's pretty unique and a phenomenal existence, and we wouldn't be able to do it without people believing in stories the way that we do. So.
Absolutely. Well, we will make sure to include all the links to your website and your various social media profiles and everything on the show notes for today. So for everyone listening, if you want to connect with these guys, go to wiredtohunt.com/episode 50, and I'll have links for everything that Aaron just said there, so you'll be able to click to it and get in touch with them or check out their work. And please do that. Please do check out their videos, check out their images. These guys are doing some incredible stuff. So check that out. And Aaron and Dustin, thank you so much for joining us.
And Matt. Don't forget Matt.
And Matt too. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. We really appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, that's going to be a wrap for us today. And I hope this episode got you thinking a bit, and maybe it'll be a good conversation starter for you the next time you sit down with your own hunting buddies. That said, as I mentioned earlier, for show notes from this episode with all the links and resources we discussed today, please visit wiredtohunt.com/episode 50. And speaking of 50, as we noted already, this is our 1-year anniversary of the podcast. And if you've been listening along with us since we started, I've got a big favor to ask. If you haven't already, could you please give us a rating or review on iTunes? It's super easy, it takes just a couple seconds, and it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks in advance. Also, if you're not yet subscribed to the podcast on your phone or tablet, I'd highly recommend it. It makes this whole podcasting experience a lot more enjoyable and easy, and you'll get each week's new episode download straight to your device. Moving on, as always, we'd like to thank our partners who have stepped up to make the Wired to Hunt podcast possible. So big thank you to Sika Gear, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Huntera Maps, Huntsoft, Lacrosse Boots, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. And finally, thank you to you. This has been an absolutely incredible year of podcasting, and without you guys listening, it wouldn't have been possible at all. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and as always, stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.